Altitudes and perpendicular what?
Bisectors.
Altitude. Altitude is a perpendicular segment with one endpoint being a vertex. When you hear the word altitude, what's the first thing you think of? Okay, that's longitude and latitude. When you think of altitude, what's the first thing you think of? Height? Okay. How many of you ever ridden in an airplane?
Me.
Do they talk about altitude when you're in an airplane? Okay. Any more irrelevant comments, and we can just write a report. Now, altitude, when you're sitting here and here's the ground, okay, and there's a plane, okay? When they say we're flying at 30,000 feet, how are they measuring that? Are they measuring that from here to where they started taking off?
Not where they started.
Yeah, they're not saying from the airport or to where they're going. We're saying straight down. Is that correct? What do you think straight down relates to in what makes that straight down? Why is one about right here not straight down? Why is one about right here not straight down?
Because it's not at the airport. It's not right at the end point.
No.
Not even point.
What do you think makes it straight down from the ground? Let me draw something over here to the side, something separate. We'll try it again. Here's a point. Everyone would probably agree that that's straight down, right? There's the ground. Don't write this down. Here's straight down, right? Here's not straight down. Here's not straight down. What's happening?
It's coming from different angles.
Oh, one of the words I was looking for. Angle. Straight down. What does this look like it is right here?
90-degree angle.
That's what straight down means. Because if you think about it, when you're talking about the different ways you could measure to this point, as we get closer to straight down, this angle gets closer and closer to what? 90, and then it starts getting farther and farther away on the other side, doesn't it? So that's why in the definition of an altitude, why we say it's a perpendicular segment, meaning that straight down means that it forms a what? Right angle. This, if we called this A and we called this B, AB is an altitude. It tells how high this vertex is, and if the ground was the other 2 point where the other 2 points meet. Would you agree? However, there's going to be how many altitudes in a triangle? Do you think?
A lot.
No, there's going to be 3. There's how many vertexes? I could then turn it like this and say this is the ground, and whatever point tells how high that is, right? Then I could turn it like that, right? And say that's the ground. Whatever one tells how high that is. Now, how do those work? Well, there's basically 3 types of altitudes. And I want you to write these down right now on your paper. I want you to write this box from the book.
Alright, those 3.
Yes. Altitudes of a triangle. There's altitudes of an acute triangle, In other words, the angle that they're finding the altitude of is acute. The altitude of a right triangle, which means it's actually the side. And then there's the altitude of an obtuse angle, which look what has to happen. What has to happen here of an obtuse triangle? It ends up going what? Outside the triangle. So write those three down. And you have your book to do this as well. When you're done with that, write down the word perpendicular bisector underneath it. No, not the bar out, no. All right. Perpendicular bisector. The definition of this is given away by the words itself. What does the word perpendicular mean? No. Didn't we just talk about the perpendicular? Okay, go back to altitude. What is an altitude? Perpendicular segment with one endpoint being the vertex. What made that segment right here? This is the altitude. What made it perpendicular?
Straight down.
It was straight down, which means it with this side. Perpendicular means that a line or two segments intersect to form what? Right angle, or four right angles, actually, if you could extend this out. So, perpendicular means what? Intersect to form a right angle. What does the word bisector mean? Cuts it into equal halves. So what is a perpendicular bisector? A line that is perpendicular to a segment and also cuts the segment what? In half. So it is a line that intersects to form a right angle and also cuts that same segment in what? In some triangles, the median, perpendicular bisector, and altitude can actually be the same line. It's very rare, but it happens in one type of triangle. I'm curious if you guys can guess, after I draw this triangle, what type it is. So far, you're all wrong. I'll draw two of them.
Did somebody already say a right angle triangle?
Yes.
Oh, that's obtuse. No, okay.
That is obtuse.
That is obtuse.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
That one's big one.
That's definitely a
That
right
one's
angle.
really huge.
None of them are right triangles. Because this right here is the segment that I'm talking about being the altitude, perpendicular bisector, and the median.
You want to write that down?
Right now, just look up here. Okay, if it's an altitude, it starts at the vertex and creates a right angle with the opposite side. Correct? Tells how high that is. So as we can see, it satisfies that. It's an altitude. If it's a perpendicular bisector, it's perpendicular to this segment and it cuts it in half. It does appear to do that, doesn't it? If it's a median, it is a segment whose endpoints are the vertex and the midpoint of the other side. Is that the case here? So that works there. Here, obviously it's an altitude. Does look like it cuts it in half, doesn't it? So it's a perpendicular bisector, and it goes from the midpoint there. Now, what does it look like is in common about these two? One is acute and one's obtuse, so that has nothing to do with it. Neither one of them are right. Is there anything that looks to be in common with those two things? Actually, it's exactly wrong. Scaling is very wrong. No, the right angles are not part of the actual triangle. This is the triangle. What'd you say?
Why wouldn't it not be a scale?
Because it's isosceles. A scalene, by definition, none of the sides are congruent. This is isosceles because this one is congruent to that one.
I thought the isosceles was
Then,
skinny triangle.
nope. This one is congruent to. Isosceles means that it has two congruent sides. Turn around, please. Has two congruent sides. That's what makes something isosceles. And because these sides are the same, when you draw from that from the vertex of an isosceles triangle, it ends up cutting it in half, being a right and being a right angle, which means it's all three of those. That's the only type of triangle where a altitude is also a median and a perpendicular bisector. Okay? So you can write that down now. Now, after that, get out your worksheet. We'll do some examples.
You didn't get to worksheet yesterday, did you?
No.
No.
It would work on an equilateral. An equilateral is an isosceles triangle, isn't it?
I said equilateral.
Yeah, but not. But these two weren't equilateral, were they? So you only named some of them. Hence why I draw the second one that was obviously not equilateral. The first one looked really close to being an equilateral.
The scaling was pretty close.
It's exactly wrong. Isosceles means two sides are congruent. A scaling means no sides are congruent.
Let's still
So they're exact opposites of each other.
No, it's not. It's not the right answer.
Shh. Come on. If you're going to just chat to people up there, you're not going to stay there. Now, let's look at number one. We're supposed to tell whether the one in bold here is altitude or whether it's perpendicular. Yes.
Can I get the worksheet from yesterday?
We didn't have a worksheet yesterday. Now, this is the one in bold in case you can't tell. J to L. You need one of these?
No, he wanted the rest of the notes.
Not right now. We're doing something, aren't we? So now's not time to ask for that, D. Hey, I'll give you the copy. I'll put it back up here after we're done, okay? I'll freeze it. Now, J to L. What is this one? What is it? Now, this is, I hate this. I don't like that they do this. They ought to write that right there. Because I tell you guys never to assume something's a right angle, but obviously that's what they're asking you to do here. You're to assume that's a right angle. So which one is this? Is it an altitude perpendicular bisector or both? It's an altitude. It tells how high that is, doesn't it? Does it cut any side in half? So it's just a what? Right here. Does it look to be a right angle? Does it look to cut this in half? However, did they draw a line or a segment? So it can't be an altitude because it's going on forever and ever. If they had drawn a segment there, it would be both. Does that make sense? So this is a perpendicular bisector.
Is this the isosceles triangle?
That is actually an isosceles triangle. But because the bold part was a line, that line is not an altitude because it doesn't stop. An altitude has to be a segment because it has to tell how high it is by its length. Right here, this looks to be a right angle. Does it look to cut that in half? So this is a what? Perpendicular bisector. A perpendicular bisector can be either a line or a segment. Not a perpendicular bisector, no. All it has to do is be perpendicular to it and cut it in half. Right here, does it look like it's a right angle or cut that in half? So which one is it? Can't be either one. Here, does this look like it's a right angle? So is it telling how high this point is if this was the ground? So if you turn it like that, it's easier to see that, isn't it? So this is a what? Right here, does this look like it forms a right angle when it intersects? Does it look like it cuts it in half? So this is a... Okay, and we're not doing construction, so don't worry about that. Any questions on this? Pretty easy section, right?